My stepmom and stepsister burned my passport to ruin my dream trip. But this time my dad was on my side. I'm 19. For as long as I can remember, I've always considered family to be everything. But that wasn't the reality I faced. What happened to me was a betrayal that ran deep, one that involved my father, my stepmother, and my stepsister, and it began on what should have been the happiest day of my life, my 18th birthday. My mother passed away when I was 6, leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. But she also left behind something beautiful, our shared love for Indian culture. Mom had been fascinated by everything Indian. Some of my earliest memories are of us cuddled on the couch, watching Bollywood movies together, her explaining the intricate dance moves and the meaning behind every gesture. After she passed, those movies became my connection to her. My father, bless his heart, kept the tradition alive. Every Friday night, we'd order takeout from the local Indian restaurant and watch a film together. It was our way of keeping her memory alive, and through those nights, Dad promised me that someday we'd visit India together, a tribute to Mom's unfulfilled dream. Years passed, and that promise seemed to fade into the background, especially after Dad married Julia when I was 12. Julia brought her daughter Terry, who is 2 years older than me, into our lives. From the beginning, something felt off. Julia would make subtle comments about how we needed to move forward and create new traditions. She'd schedule family activities during our Friday movie nights, slowly eroding the one connection I had to my mother's memory. Terry was different, but equally challenging. She'd mock my interest in Indian culture, calling it weird and obsessive. When I practiced dance moves from the movies in my room, she'd record me and threaten to post the videos online to embarrass me. It was clear that neither of them understood or cared about what these traditions meant to me. That's why my 18th birthday felt like a miracle. Dad had been working extra shifts and saving money in secret for years. When he presented me with the envelope containing 2 tickets to India, I couldn't believe it. He had remembered. He had kept his promise. The party itself was perfect, almost. My friends were thrilled for me, sharing my excitement as I showed them the itinerary Dad had planned. We would visit Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, the Golden Triangle. We'd see the Taj Mahal, explore ancient temples, and even attend a traditional Indian wedding festival. It was everything I'd dreamed of. But while my friends celebrated with me, I couldn't ignore the dark cloud in the corner. Julia stood there, arms crossed, her face a mask of barely concealed rage. Terry kept making loud comments about how some people get everything handed to them and how real families don't take exclusive trips. That night, the argument I overheard between Dad and Julia was brutal. I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding as Julia's voice grew louder. "How dare you plan this behind my back? Do you know how this makes Terry feel? She's never had a trip like this." "This isn't about Terry," Dad replied, his voice firm but tired. "This is about Lily and a promise I made to her mother. You knew about this when we got married." "Oh, of course. Everything's always about Lily and her precious, dead mother. When are you going to let go of the past, James? We're your family now." I ran to my room before I could hear more, but the damage was done. The joy of my birthday had been tainted by their bitterness. The next few weeks were tense. Small things started happening. My travel documents would mysteriously move from where I'd left them. My Indian language practice books would disappear only to reappear days later. I started keeping everything important in a locked box in my room. Then came the day I found my passport. The discovery wasn't as simple as finding it under magazines. There was more to the story. I had been searching the house frantically when I heard giggling from the garage. Following the sound, I found Terry on her phone, texting rapidly. When she saw me, she quickly shoved her phone in her pocket and rushed past me. Something about her behavior set off alarm bells. I went back to searching and finally found my passport under those magazines, burned and ruined. But this time, I was smarter. Instead of confronting them immediately, I set up my phone to record and pretended to leave the house. From my hiding spot, I heard everything. Julia and Terry were in the living room, laughing about their perfect plan. Mom, did you see her face when she couldn't find it? Terry giggled. And now it's too late to get a new one before the trip. Serves her right, Julia replied. Maybe now your dad will understand that we need to be included in these things. I'm sick of her getting special treatment just because of her mother. I felt sick to my stomach, but I kept recording. They went on to discuss how they had taken the passport while I was at school, how Julia had used her cigarette lighter to burn the edges first before holding it over the stove flame. They had planned everything, thinking they could force Dad to either cancel the trip or include them. When I called Dad at work, I didn't just tell him about the passport, I played him the recording. His reaction was something I'll never forget. The color drained from his face as he listened, and then a hardness came into his eyes that I'd never seen before. Pack a bag, he said quietly. You're staying at your aunt's house tonight. I need to handle this. What happened next was like watching a hurricane tear through our family. Dad confronted Julia and Terry with a recording, but instead of just arguing, he took action. He called his lawyer that same day and started divorce proceedings. He filed a police report about the destroyed passport, using the recording as evidence. Julia and Terry were forced to move out that week, staying with Julia's sister while Dad's lawyer worked on the paperwork. The next few weeks were intense. Julia tried everything, crying, begging, threatening legal action of her own. But Dad stood firm. You destroyed government documents, he told her. You deliberately tried to hurt my daughter.
There's no coming back from that.
Getting my new passport became a priority. Dad took time off work to help expedite the process, explaining our situation to the passport office. We had to pay extra fees for expedited service, which Dad made Julia reimburse through his lawyer. The authorities took the destruction of a passport seriously, and Julia faced potential legal consequences. Through all of this, what touched me most was how Dad never wavered. He looked at me one evening, his eyes tired but determined, and said, I let your mother down once by not taking this trip sooner. I'm not letting her down again, and I'm certainly not letting you down. The legal aftermath of Julia's actions continued to unfold even after our return. The authorities took the passport destruction very seriously, especially given the premeditated nature of the act. The recording I'd made proved invaluable, not just for the divorce proceedings, but for the criminal investigation as well. Julia faced charges for destroying government documents, and while she eventually got off with probation and a fine, the experience shattered her reputation in our community. Terry's role in all this had its own consequences. Her college friends found out about what she'd done, and many of them distanced themselves from her. She tried to spin the story in her favor on social media, posting long rants about how she was the victim of a broken family, but the truth had a way of coming out. Several of our mutual friends had witnessed her behavior at my birthday party and came forward with their own stories of her jealousy and manipulation. One day, about 6 months after our return from India, I received a lengthy email from Terry. Unlike her previous half-hearted text apology, this one seemed more genuine. She wrote about how she'd been in therapy, working through her issues with jealousy and her relationship with her mother. She acknowledged how wrong they had been and detailed the ways her mother had manipulated her throughout her life. While I appreciated her honesty, I couldn't bring myself to respond. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The trust they'd broken wasn't just about the passport. It was about years of subtle undermining, of trying to erase my mother's memory, of treating my dreams and heritage as something to be ashamed of. Dad's transformation through all of this was remarkable. After the divorce was finalized, he seemed lighter somehow, as if standing up to Julia had freed him from a weight he'd been carrying. He started talking more about Mom, sharing stories I'd never heard before. We discovered old photo albums in the attic of our new house, and he told me about their early dating days, how Mom had introduced him to Indian culture, how they'd planned to travel there together before she got sick. We've made our new house a tribute to both our heritage and our journey. The walls are decorated with photos from our India trip, mixed with old pictures of Mom. We converted one room into a small home theater where we continue our Friday movie traditions, but now we also host cultural events for friends who want to learn more about Indian cinema and customs. What Julia and Terry tried to diminish has only grown stronger. The experience changed how I view family dynamics forever. I've become more observant of how people treat each other, more aware of the subtle signs of jealousy and manipulation. In college now, I'm studying psychology with a focus on family counseling. I want to help other families navigate complex relationships and cultural differences to prevent others from experiencing what I went through. Dad's healing journey has been inspiring to watch. He's started dating again, but this time he's much more careful about who he lets into our lives. Any woman he dates has to understand and respect our connection to Mom's memory and our Indian cultural practices. It's no longer something he feels he has to apologize for or hide. The scandal with the passport, while painful, had an unexpected silver lining. It exposed the toxic elements in our lives and gave us the push we needed to remove them. Sometimes, it takes a dramatic act of betrayal to show us who really has our best interests at heart. As for Julia and Terry, last I heard, they'd moved to another state, starting fresh where their reputation hadn't preceded them. Part of me hopes they've learned from their mistakes and grown as people. But a bigger part of me is simply grateful that they're no longer in a position to hurt us or diminish what we hold dear. Looking back, I realize that while family should be everything, the true meaning of family isn't about blood relations or legal ties. It's about respect, understanding, and supporting each other's dreams. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. And sometimes, it's about knowing when to let go of toxic relationships to preserve what's truly important. Our story didn't end with that first trip to India. In many ways, it was just the beginning. Every Friday night, as Dad and I settle in for our movie tradition, I'm reminded that some bonds grow stronger through adversity. We've built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal, a relationship based on trust, respect, and shared values. Mom's dream of India has become our reality, but it's given us so much more than just travel memories. It's given us the strength to stand up for ourselves, the wisdom to recognize true family from false, and the courage to keep our cultural heritage alive. Because some traditions, like some bonds, can't be broken, no matter how hard others might try. They can only grow stronger, richer, and more meaningful with each passing day.